fellow Ambazonians. Chris Ano here, your communications secretary. Today is Saturday, March 10, in the year of our Lord, 2018. Coming to you today, I have no doubt that many of you listening to the sound of my voice are very familiar with the immediate history of our revolution beginning in October 2016. Many of you are obviously aware too that yours truly have disagreed on very many occasions with many leaders of the revolution who clinged to the idea of diplomacy as the only instrument that should deliver Boya into our hands from the colonial hegemony that is La République du Cameroon. They preach so much gospel of diplomacy, wanting us to believe that diplomacy and only diplomacy remains the mechanism through which our dream for the actualization of an independent Southern Cameroon would come to pass. In the contrary, ever before getting into the corridors of your interim government, yours truly was one of the loudest voices out there advocating for self-defense as priority tactic to reclaiming our freedom, suggesting that diplomacy should come only because it is a matter of necessity. But the argument has been summarily that both must work together. On October 1st, when we gathered in the counties and state capitals all over the southern Cameroons to celebrate the declaration of the restoration of our independence, yours truly was again the one who called out Ambazonians in and around Boya, from Moyuka, Ekone, Muya, Tiko, Mutengene, to converge in Boya to seize the governor's mansion and drive out the colonial governors. The same advocacy was made for the northern zone, and I truly believe then that if we all had poured out in a 1 million man march like in Tahrir Square in Egypt, when Egyptians in the same vein forced out Hosni Mubarak, that the colonial governors in Boya and Bamenda would have been toppled or forced out or made to escape. Again and again in the past, I have in positions aside from the interim government argued and maintained that diplomacy isn't and cannot be the only approach to take us to Boya, not anytime soon if we want to rely solely on aid. I have argued that we have no country in Africa to show which has obtained independence in this contemporary period on a conference table without waging a fight. The cases of Eritrea and the Southern Sudan are very much fresh in mind. In write-ups upon write-ups, I have referred to our young men in ground zero, living in the fringes and bushes and putting their lives on the line to defend our people and our territory and our freedom as the bravest in this revolution. And they indeed remain the bravest. They are our own very heroes of the revolution, and without them, soldiers of the occupation regime would have continued to rape our women, rape our mothers, and rape our sisters. Without the young heroes whom I call the defenders of Ambazonia, genocide being perpetrated on us by La République du Cameroon would be an understatement. Not only Americans should know how to honor their heroes. We Ambazonians can never forget the young heroes from La République, the young heroes whom La République du Cameroon soldiers have cut down in their prime, in the towns and villages around Manu, in the streets of Boya, Kumba, Bamenda, Kwakwa, Kumbo, Indu, Inkambe, Indop, Nguti, Modemba, Ekona, Muyuka, Motengene, Bangam, Tiko, Jakiri, Batibo, and you can go on and name the rest. We shall never, never again forget the sacrifices of these young heroes, many of whom are still in the front lines today. They are defending our territory in self-defense and making sure we actualize our independence. But pause for a second. Did someone say I refer to these brave men as cowards, as insignificant and rendering useless service to our country? Did someone say I describe them in derogatory and condescending terms? The people that question my unallowed respect and support for these young men and the work they do in self-defense are the commanders who have no strategy but wants them to just go fight and die so that they can come on social media and claim the credit and then walk over their corpses to raise funds. Such are the ones I refer to as cowards. In my last outing, I questioned the validity of a hit-and-run tactic that doesn't have any other strategy behind it. By no means was I attributing the cowardly and dastard acts of mayhem by the terrorist forces of French Cameroon to our brave self-defense men who just want to protect their lives and fight for what belongs to them. No excuse whatsoever can be made or given on earth why a country's army will descend upon innocent people in towns and villages in another country, drive them out, burn down their homes, and kill some of them, as La Republique de Cameroon is doing. The acts of genocide that are being perpetrated in our territory, Ambazonia, and now especially in Batibo, no matter what, will never, ever be justified. And how interesting that the so-called international community continues to sit and watch as 86-year-old good for the grave Paul Biya of French Cameroon continues with utter impunity to decimate whole towns and villages in the southern Cameroons. The United Nations, the European Union, the Commonwealth, the African Union, the French and the British governments are all accomplices to the genocidal crimes being committed against the people of the southern Cameroons, just as they were responsible for the genocide in Rwanda. And that is why we will make sure that La République du Cameroon pays, and pays very, very dearly, what it is doing in our territory. They can go ahead, they can go on and burn down more villages, kill more people, and send others running into the bushes and into refugee camps. It isn't going to break our resolve. It will not derail or deter our resolve to defend our territory and actualize our independence. And here is where the interim government has come in with an urgent appeal for collaboration and coordination of all ground self-defense initiatives that take place on the ground. The interim government is all for a surgical approach that will see minimal damage done to our communities and our people. This question of a coordinated self-defense is coming up again and again from people who think that the interim government ought to put its plans on social media and then explain what it is doing, what it has done, and what it is planning to do. This is exactly what I call cowardice. Cowardice is when you go to war with your plan, put on table for your enemy to see, and then use the knowledge of it to preempt you. Cowardice is when you fail to plan, but carry out such propaganda and grandstanding that gives the enemy reasons to decimate entire towns and villages. The interim government has said that since the abduction of our leaders and subsequent transfer to Yaoundé, that it can no longer compromise the rule of self-defense in this revolution, knowing the blind eye that the international community has paid to the crisis. But the interim government is also of the position that collateral damage and loss of life has to be minimized as much as possible. and what it takes to minimize the losses, which are mostly on our side, is to build an effective and an enduring collaborated and coordinated strategy that exerts maximum pain on the enemy, while at the same time minimizing deaths and property loss on our people. And there is lots of wisdom in this, because the neighbor who witnessed the other neighbor's house burn down will only too soon give up courage and morale for the struggle, because he fears that if he doesn't, his own house may be the next to go down in flames. Self-defense, therefore, must, I repeat, must be carefully thought out, so that hit and run is not all what self-defense is about. It should not be the end. It should only be part of the strategy. The point here is that self-defense should not only mean or be limited to hit and run. That is, without strategy. We all know of what happens when that happens. We know what becomes of the people in those localities. We also know exactly what becomes of the houses and other property in the communities. We are saying that if we must hit and run, then a strategy must be in place that protects the lives and property of the people in the immediate community or communities, and not leave them at the mercy of the terrorists from French Cameroon. We are still very much in the morning of this struggle. And if we think that hit and run is both the tactic and the strategy, no one may be left before we get to Boya. The Republic of Cameroon doesn't care how many villages they burn down and how many people they slaughter. Ours is a call for wisdom, not an indictment. Only our towns and villages are being razed, and La Republic of Cameroon isn't coming back to make compensation for a rebuild. Only our families are being sent running into the bushes and to refugee camps, not those of La Republic of Cameroon. Only our people are being roasted alive. Only our parents are losing their lifetime investments in their homes and property and labor, not La Republic of Cameroon. It is apparent that when I argue against hit and run as a tactic, people misunderstand, and surrogates want to go out there and say that the interim government or that Chris Anu is criticizing the sacrifice of our brave young men on the ground. That is not true. Don't those boys want to fight and live? Don't they want to live so they too can witness that day, that great reunion day in Boya? Neither the interim government nor Chris Anu is against hit and run. Rather, we are against a poorly thought out tactic or strategy that doesn't get us occupying any territory. That in itself won't take us to Boya. Only concise planning and real strategy will do. You get into Batable, for example, or say Kwakwa, and you pick up 3 La Republic of Cameroon terrorists at a checkpoint. Run away with them or send them to hell. And you are very well aware that within 24 hours, the terrorists of La Republic of Cameroon will send in reinforcement to come in from behind to burn down the town or burn down the village. Are those 3 terrorists worth an entire town or village and the lives of those they will kill on arrival? We have seen this drama repeat itself again and again in quarters inside Kumba, Batibo, Kembong, Ekok, Akwaya, Bisongabang, Abokem. You can name more. In some of these cases, whole towns have been burnt down. The people in their youths left camping for shelter in undesirable places. Many people who now live in refugee camps would love to return to their homes, but they cannot because those homes don't exist anymore. They have been wiped out or burnt down. Who is going to rebuild the houses for them? Not La Republique du Cameroon. We have to do everything in this early stage of the struggle to minimize the amount of self-inflicted damage and pain on our own people. If we do not do that and just keep on hitting and running, we will only too soon discover that morale and support for the revolution has waned. The leaders of all self-defense groups have a responsibility, an urgent responsibility, to come together as the interim government has proposed to figure out a better way of defending our homeland, our territory, and our people. Hit and run is good when particular targets or institutions in the urban areas are the target. Hit and run is good if it is done in colonial or enemy territory. It leaves the colonial soldier mesmerized, not knowing who to target. They get perplexed and defeated. If hit and run must be done as a strategy, why not also plan on how to defend the town and the people after the action is taken? Somebody has asked, Chris, please, if you were in Kembong, Kwakwa, and the many other places, what would you have done to deter the terrorist forces of La République du Cameroon? My answer is, let's take a lesson from the game of football. In football, you do not have an offensive strategy without a defense. You are destined to lose when you do that. Fellow Amazonians, we are going to Boya, and this requires collaboration from all self-defense groups. The barbaric regime of Paul Biya is on a killing and destruction spree on our people and their property. To be protected, we need collaboration and coordination of action and intelligence. No single group can achieve these on its own. Now, it is left upon you, Amazonians, to decide whether or not to form a collaborative platform that will yield the desired results or individual groups. This is the vision of your interim government. If you stand for a collaborative and coordinated platform for self-defense, please get into the flight to Boya. Make your donation at ambergulf.org. Again, the website is ambergulf.org. We will live free or die. Again, this came to you from Chris Anu, your communications secretary, and thanks for listening today.